Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome to In the Studio. Today I want to touch on recycling parts. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking bits and hits and pieces from previously finished tracks and reusing them in new projects. So this isn't something that I always do, but sometimes I will. And you don't even have to use those parts as is. You can completely repurpose them and use them in a creative new way for your new project. And in this video, I have an example of how I might go about doing this. So let's listen to this little demo groove I put together for the video, and we'll get right into it. Okay, so that's the little groove that we'll be working with. And then this over here is a grouped stem. So all of my top end drum elements, hats, shakers, cymbals, and whatnot, bounce out as one stem, taken from my Time Lapse remix, as you can see here. Time Lapse by Jeremy Isma and Alistair. If you want to check out my remix, it's on my SoundCloud page and it's available as a free download. Anyways, I'm going to maybe take a little piece of this and repurpose it for this little groove here. So let's have a listen. Okay, cool. I like that little 606 hat effect. So I think I want to have a piece of that in there, but I don't want the full-on hit, but maybe just the tail end. So maybe if I just take like these 2 bars here, just cut these out, and we'll just loop those up, I think. So what I'm thinking is I want to make like a washed out, kind of sloshy, heavily sidechained loop that's just going to add to the groove and give some nice movement in the background and really help tie everything together as far as the hats and maybe some like mid-range percussion once I get some percussion in here. But let's give it a go. The first thing I'm going to do is pitch this down an octave. So I'm going to switch this to stretch and then pitch it down 1 octave. And let's hear what that sounds like. I'm going to mute the bass for a second. Okay. Okay, so now let's add an EQ here. I want to take away some of these frequencies, in particular some off the top end, but we'll just make a bandpass filter because I want to, clean up the low end as well. So maybe roll the low end off right around 300. And we'll take off some of the top end too. Yeah. Something like that, I think. Just want to take a little bit of that top end off. Or actually quite a bit, actually. All right, let's add a delay here. I want to give this a little bit more groove. Make it a little bit more interesting. So while we're playing around with this, I'm going to turn this mix down to around 50%. And I'm just going to take a minute here and just fiddle around with some of the timings and just kind of dial this in. And we'll go from there. Nice. I like that. Let's maybe switch this to ping pong and pan this out. Yeah. Cool. Okay, I'm liking this. Yeah, I just pulled back on the feedback a little bit. I thought it was a little bit much, and then rolled off some of the top end of the feedback as well. And then gave the feedback a little bit of a bit crusher effect down around roughly 8 bits. I think I might even pull back on the mix a little bit. Yeah. Cool. And then I might just introduce a little bit of modulation with the timing. So I'm going to pull back on this rate here, and then I'll just make this extreme so you can hear what it's doing. Yeah, having the, the mix all the way up on that was just made the timing a little bit too loose for me for this particular sound. So I think just a subtle bit of movement or modulation with the timing, I think will work better for me in this particular case. But I think the delay is pretty good for now. The next thing I want to do, and this is super important for this sound, is running it through a big reverb to really wash it out. So I'm going to use a reverb that I don't usually use, and that is, I'll use the, where are you? The Reverb Pro from UAD. And what I'm going to do is switch on the wet solo, so all we're hearing is the reverb. And I'm just going to flick through some of these presets, because like I mentioned, I want this to be a really washed out sound. So let's have a listen here. Really quick though, I want to add some side chaining. Well, that'll do, I think. Okay, let's go back to the reverb. Yep. Nice. That's the one there. That's doing exactly what I want it to do. And then I just pulled back on the the low end of the reverb so we don't get too much buildup down there. But I like that. Eternity, perfect. Okay, so now we have a nice washed out sound, and I want to add a little bit more movement here. So I'm going to try this delay mod. And there's actually a nice preset on here I like to use sometimes, and it's called the Smooth Wide Chorus. Let's hear how that sounds on this. I think it might work nice. Yeah. Yeah, that works nice. We get a little bit more width there. There is some subtle modulation happening, and it just, I think, makes it a little bit more interesting. But I'm going to pull back on the mix a little bit. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I want to maybe give this even more movement and make it a little bit more lively. Like I said, this is going to be tucked down low, but I want it kind of sloshing around and moving. So I think some auto panning would do the trick there. So I'm going to use this pancake plugin, and I want a pretty fast cycle speed. So let's go for a half bar. And let's see, I'll keep the mix at 100 while I'm just for a second, but I'm just going to use this little random switch here, and this might work. I'll just pull this in a little bit, something like that, just something that kind of sways back and forth, but it's not your typical sine wave or triangle or whatever. Let's see how that sounds. Maybe go a little bit more extreme. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's quite nice actually. Just bouncing back and forth from left to right, but it just makes it feel a little bit more alive. All right, cool. So let's just tuck this down low underneath the hats and see how it sounds with the bass in there too. Actually, before we do that, there's one more thing I want to try here actually. And that's maybe adding a little bit of pitch modulation here. So this is just kind of an afterthought, but let's give it a try. So I'm going to automate this. So I'll just create an automation clip here for the pitch. I'm just going to put this underneath while we're working on it. I'm going to make this a half bar as well, just like we did for the panning. And we can experiment with the amount that we're pitching it, but I think I'm gonna maybe just try something that's kind of subtle. So I'm just gonna copy that value. So this will be just under 20 cents. And now I'm just going to paste that here so you can see just a little bit of movement there. You really have to concentrate, but I think it does make that a little bit more groovy, and just creates that harmonic cell as we get a slight pitch up every half bar. But like I said, we can experiment, maybe go more extreme here. You can experiment with this. Let's try pitching it up a little bit more. And then playing with the curves too drastically changes how the sound feels. So something like that could work too, I think, but for this sound, I'm going to keep it a little bit more subliminal. So I think that's adding a little extra something something. Yeah. And there you go. Now we have this nice kind of spacey loop that's adding to the groove. We get some nice movement there. It's helping, I think, tie some of the elements together. And we used, the original grouped stem in a completely new and creative way for this new project. So hopefully you found this useful. I'll catch you soon, everyone, and take care.